It was past midnight when Ed Warren sprinkled holy water on a rag doll. It wasn't just any doll. And I wasn't blessing it out of devotion. He did it because, according to him, it was the only way to keep his car's engine running on Interstate 95. 60 miles back, in a Hartford apartment, a nursing student had just turned in this doll, because she was convinced that something inside it had tried to kill them. This is the story of Annabelle, the doll that transformed domestic terror into a $2 billion franchise, and that even today, more than 50 years later, remains locked away. But the question is not whether you believe the story. The question is, how was this legend built? Today we're going to unravel one of the most emblematic cases in modern American demonology. A case that began with a simple rag doll, became the heart of a paranormal empire, and ended up inspiring some of the most successful horror films in cinematic history. But before you think of the terrifying porcelain doll you saw in the movies, let me show you something. This is the Hollywood Annabelle. And this is the real Annabelle. A typical Raggedy Ann doll. Red yarn hair, a floral apron, button eyes. The kind of doll your grandmother might have had on a shelf. The kind of doll you could have bought at any toy store in 1970. So how did it go from being an innocent birthday present to becoming what the Warrens called one of the most dangerous objects they ever investigated? To understand that, we have to travel back in time. To the late 1960s. To a United States very different from the one we know today. 1968 to 1970. The country is torn apart. The Vietnam War reaches its bloodiest point. In May of '70, the National Guard fires on students at Kent State and Jackson State. The streets are filled with protests, tear gas, and a generation that rejects everything their parents held sacred. But it's also the age of Aquarius. The age of make love, not war. Of spiritual communes and tarot sessions. Of Ouija boards in college dorms and books on reincarnation on nightstands. Chris McKinnell, the Warrens' grandson, describes it this way: this was the age of Aquarius. They were like, oh wow, there must be a spirit in the doll. Hartford, Connecticut. A declining industrial city. And somewhere in that city, probably near Hartford Hospital, there's a modest apartment. 2 bedrooms. Brick building. Nothing extraordinary. 2 young women live here. According to sources, their names are Donna and Angie, both nursing students. Donna is 28 years old. Angie is 25. They are building their careers and independent lives. They are part of that first generation of professional women who can live alone, without husbands, without constant family supervision. And like many young women their age, they have dolls, posters, plants. Personal items that make an apartment feel like home. It's 1968, or perhaps 1970. Sources vary. But sometime during that period, Donna's mother enters a store. He sees a Raggedy Ann doll. And she thinks, perfect gift for my daughter. She has no idea that she has just bought what would become America's most infamous doll. Narrator. Now, this is where the story gets complicated. Because everything we know about what happened next comes from a single source, Ed and Lorraine Warren. Ed Warren. Born in 1926. Self-taught demonologist. Former police officer who studied Catholic exorcism rites. A man who dedicated his life to pursuing what he considered real demonic manifestations. Lorraine Warren. Born in 1927. She claimed to be clairvoyant. She said she could sense the presence of spirits, see auras, and perceive energies that others could not. Together they founded the New England Society for Psychic Research in 1952. By 1970, they claimed to have investigated more than 10,000 cases. But here's the problem: there were never any police reports. There were never any government investigations. There was never any independent documentation of almost any of their cases. As the researcher points out, one of the biggest difficulties in investigating any of the Warrens' cases is that there is little information outside of what the Warrens themselves have provided. So, what did the Warrens tell us about Annabelle? At first, nothing happened. Donna placed the doll on her bed. Or perhaps on the sofa. Sources are unclear. But for weeks, maybe months, Annabelle was simply a doll. Until it ceased to be so. According to the Warrens' account, Donna began to notice something strange. Little things. The doll wasn't exactly where she had left it. He would leave her sitting on the sofa before going to work. He would return 8 hours later. The bedroom door was closed. And the doll was inside. The women began to notice that Annabelle seemed to move on her own, the Warrens documented. Now, let's pause here for a moment. Have you ever left something in one place and sworn you left it somewhere else? It's a common psychological phenomenon. Our brains are terrible at remembering mundane details, especially when we live repetitive routines. But Donna and Angie didn't live alone. They both noticed. They both started paying attention. And then things got stranger. One day, according to the testimony, they left Annabelle in Donna's bed. When they returned, they found something impossible. The doll was kneeling in the living room. Now, if you have a Raggedy Ann doll nearby, try this. Make it kneel. You'll see it's nearly impossible. Raggedy Ann dolls are stuffed with soft material. They have no internal structure. They can't hold complex positions. They tried to recreate the kneeling position and were unable to get the doll to kneel without it falling over, the Warrens documented. Logic? Basic physics? Sure. But also unsettling. And then the notes appeared. Small pieces of paper. Not ordinary paper. Parchment paper. Somewhat old, yellowed. With handwritten messages. Help us. Help Lou. Lou was the boyfriend of one of the girls. And here's the strange thing, according to the Warrens, no one in the house had parchment paper. Donna checked her drawers. Angie checked hers. Nothing. That kind of paper simply didn't exist in the apartment. Now, from a skeptical perspective, this raises obvious questions. Did the girls really check everything? Could a neighbor have left the notes? Was it really parchment paper or just old paper? But from Donna and Angie's perspective, living in that apartment, finding these notes day after day, can you imagine the fear growing? Then came the night that changed everything. Donna returned home from work. She went into her bedroom. And he found Annabelle in his bed. With blood on his hands. Or at least, what looked like blood. A red liquid. On the doll's cloth hands. Stains that shouldn't be there. The Warrens documented this carefully. On November 2, 1970, they photographed the doll. They noticed a faint red stain on her dress that looked like blood. The next day, the stain had disappeared. For Donna, that was the breaking point. Something was deeply wrong. But I didn't yet know how bad it was going to get. Lou never trusted the doll. From the moment she saw it, she felt something. She hated the doll from the beginning, the Warrens documented. She felt there was something evil about it. The girls dismissed him. He was just a doll. Lou was superstitious. Until the afternoon when he was left alone in the apartment. Donna was at work. Lou was in the living room. And then she heard noises. Upstairs. In Donna's bedroom. As if someone had entered. Lou went upstairs. The door was closed. He opened it slowly. There was nobody there. But the doll was on the floor. Face down. As if it had fallen. Or as if it had been placed there. And then he felt the pain. A burning pain in his chest. He looked down. Blood. Claw marks across his chest. 7 deep lines. As if something had scratched him furiously. According to the testimony, she found bloody claw marks running across his chest. 2 days later, they had disappeared without a trace. No scars. No marks. As if it never happened. Except Lou saw it. He felt it. And he swore he would never be alone with that doll again. Donna was desperate. She needed answers. Then she did what many young women of the age of Aquarius would have done. She called a medium. The medium came to the apartment. He held a séance. And according to the account, he made contact. The entity was identified. Her name was Annabelle Higgins. A little girl. She had died on the property where the building now stood. She was alone. Scared. And she had been drawn to the two young nurses because they were the only kind people in the building. The ghost girl had a simple request. Can I stay? Can I live in the doll to be with you? And Donna and Angie, with their compassionate hearts, said, yeah. According to Ed Warren, that was the fatal mistake. Because there was no Annabelle Higgins. There never was. There was no record of a dead child on the property. There was no tragic history. What the girls had invited into their lives, according to the Warrens, was not the spirit of a child. It was something much worse. November 1st, 1970. Ed and Lorraine Warren arrived at the Hartford apartment. We don't know exactly how Donna found the Warrens. The sources don't specify. Perhaps through the priest who would eventually perform the exorcism. Perhaps through someone who knew about their work. But they arrived. And they began their investigation. By that time, the Warrens were already veterans. They had investigated more than 10,000 cases, according to their own records. They had been to haunted houses in Japan, England, Scotland, and France. They had seen, according to them, everything. But even they treated Annabelle with extreme care. Lorraine performed her psychic evaluation. Ed physically examined the doll. They took photographs. They documented everything. His conclusion was immediate and terrifying. The doll itself was not possessed, but manipulated by an inhuman presence. Not a ghost. Not the spirit of a little girl. A demonic entity. According to their theology, these entities do not have bodies. They were never human. And their goal is always the same, to possess a human body. The spirit wasn't trying to stay attached to the doll. It was trying to possess a human host. The doll was just a decoy. The Warrens called a priest. We don't have his name. The sources don't specify it. But he came. And he performed a full exorcism. Not just the doll. The whole apartment. Donna. Angie. Lou. Latin prayers. Holy water. The complete Catholic exorcism ritual. And on December 6, 1970, the Warrens did something unusual. They took the doll. 60 miles. Hartford to Monroe, Connecticut. Interstate 95. A trip that would normally take just over an hour. Ed placed the doll in a black canvas bag, lined with cloth that had been blessed. Lorraine sat in the passenger seat. And they started driving. It was approximately 9:30 at night when it happened. Near Milford, Connecticut, the Warrens' 1968 Chevrolet Impala began to spin. Uncontrollably. The steering wheel shook in Ed's hands. The brakes weren't responding properly. The engine was coughing. Ed knew what to do. She took a bottle of holy water out of her bag and sprinkled it on the wrist. As soon as Ed took out holy water and sprinkled it on the wrist, the problem with the brakes disappeared. The rest of the trip was uneventful. They arrived home around midnight. And the doll went straight to Ed's study. Under lock and key. But even there, according to the Warrens, the phenomena continued. The doll levitated. It appeared in different rooms. Once they left it in the outbuilding, in a separate building from the house. Hours later, it was inside the main house. Eventually, Ed made a decision. He had a special box made. Glass and wood. With inscriptions, the Lord's Prayer and the Prayer of St. Michael. And for the rest of his life, he periodically said a binding prayer over the box. To make sure that whatever was connected to that wrist remained trapped. Chris McKinnell, the Warrens' grandson, remembers visiting the museum as a child. I remember seeing her in the box and being terrified. All the other artifacts were ready to be touched except for Annabelle. She was the only one that was tied up. And there it remained. 4 decades. Until Hollywood discovered the story. So what really happened in that Hartford apartment? We have 3 main explanations. And the truth is that none of them can be completely proven or disproven. Let's examine them honestly. Theory 1, demonic entity, the Warrens' position. The Warrens were absolutely clear in their diagnosis: this was a demon. His argument is based on several points. First, the escalation of phenomena. It began with subtle movements. Then notes. Then blood. Then a physical attack. This pattern, according to the Warrens, is classic in demonic possessions. The entities demonstrate power gradually, creating dependence and fear. Second, the Annabelle Higgins lie. According to Ed, there was never a girl by that name who died on the property. This is important in Catholic demonology. Demons lie. They disguise themselves. They pretend to be benevolent spirits to gain access. Third, the physical attack on Lou. The claw marks. This, for the Warrens, crossed the line from poltergeist phenomenon to active malevolence. The Warrens dedicated 50 years of their lives to this work. They investigated thousands of cases. There is no evidence that they fabricated them all. They were devout Catholics. For them, this was a calling. But here's the problem. Stephen Novella, a skeptical researcher who examined the Warrens' work, found something troubling. They have a lot of stories about evidence that got away. They're not doing good scientific research. They have a predetermined conclusion that they adhere to, literally and religiously. And then there's this disturbing quote. A Warren associate claimed that Ed told him, regarding a case they both knew was fake. Make it scary. People come to us. They buy into scary things. That doesn't mean Annabelle was a fake. But it does raise questions about the Warrens' methodology. Theory 2, fraud and legend building. Narrator. The skeptical explanation is straightforward. The Warrens built a legend because it was profitable. Consider the facts. They published the story in 1980 in the book The Demonologist. They built a museum that charged admission. They gave lectures, tours, and sold merchandise. Eventually, his work spawned a $2 billion film franchise. Sharon A. Hill, a science writer, points out, many of the myths and legends surrounding the Warrens were apparently of their own making. And there are problematic inconsistencies. The names of the witnesses vary between sources. Donna Deirdre Debbie. The dates change, 1968 versus 1970. There was never any independent verification of Annabelle Higgins. The original witnesses never gave verifiable public interviews. Even more critical, when skeptical investigators asked to examine the Warrens' evidence, they were denied access. They were not allowed to accompany them on investigations. They were not shown the evidence that supposedly proved paranormal phenomena. As Ed Warren said when pressed, you can't have scientific evidence for a spiritual phenomenon. Which is convenient, right? Theory 3, psychological phenomena. But there is a third explanation. One that doesn't require the Warrens to have been deliberate frauds, or that real demons existed. Psychology. Consider the context. Age of Aquarius. 1970, 2 young women living alone, immersed in a culture of alternative spirituality. Seances, Ouija boards, New Age beliefs. Donna receives the doll. Perhaps she places it somewhere. Later, she can't remember exactly where she put it. Our brains are terrible at remembering mundane details. But once she and Angie start looking for anomalies, they find them. Confirmation bias. Every tiny inconsistency becomes evidence. Then they call the medium. The medium, wanting to provide results, makes contact with a spirit. She gives them a name, Annabelle Higgins. The girls, feeling compassionate, invite the spirit to stay. Now they have permission to experiment with strange things. In fact, it would be disappointing if nothing happened. Claw marks on Lou? There is medical precedent for psychosomatic marks. Dermatography. Even religious stigmata. The mind can create real physical symptoms under extreme stress. Notes? In a state of heightened anxiety, people can do things and not remember them. Automatic writing is a known phenomenon in dissociative states. This doesn't require anyone to be lying. It requires honest people, under stress, in a conducive cultural context, to experience something that their minds interpret as paranormal. And then the Warrens arrive. Experts. Authorities. And they validate those experiences. They give them structure. They give them meaning. The story grows. Here's the uncomfortable part. No matter which theory you choose, there are parts that don't fit together perfectly. If it was a hoax, why did the Warrens treat the doll with such genuine fear? Chris McKinnell recalls that his grandmother Lorraine despised the doll. She never touched it. That wasn't a tourist act, that was inside her own home. If it was psychological, how do we explain that multiple people experienced the same phenomena? And the attack on Lou? Did he really inflict wounds on himself that healed without scarring? And if it was demonic, where is a single piece of independently verifiable evidence? The truth is, we don't know. And perhaps that's the most fascinating part of all this. Today, more than 50 years after that nursing student received a birthday present, Annabelle remains one of America's most enduring legends. The doll has inspired 7 movies. It has generated billions at the box office. It has been seen by millions of people at the Warren Museum. And in August 2025, it changed hands again when comedian Matt Rife bought the entire collection. It remains enclosed behind glass. It still has protective markings. Touching it is still prohibited. But here's the real question. The question that matters more than whether the doll is actually haunted. Why do we care? Because Annabelle represents something deeper than a paranormal case. She represents our fear of the domestic sphere transformed into a threat. A rag doll. A child's comfort object. Something that should be safe. Transformed into something malevolent. It's the same terror found in films like Child's Play, Poltergeist, and The Exorcist. The idea that your home isn't safe. That the most innocent objects can become portals to something dark. And on a deeper level, Annabelle represents our eternal fascination with the question, what lies beyond? Is there something after death? Are there forces we cannot see or measure? Is the universe just atoms and emptiness, or are there layers of reality that science cannot yet access? The Warrens spent 50 years arguing that it was true. Skeptics dedicate their careers to proving it wasn't. And the rest of U.S. are stuck in the middle. Wanting to believe. Wanting evidence. Wanting answers that may never come. So, is Annabelle really haunted? Honestly, I don't know. And after investigating this case for hours, reading every available source, examining every argument, I think that's the only honest answer I can give. What I do know is this. An ordinary Raggedy Ann doll changed lives. It inspired decades of stories. It spawned an industry. And it continues, to this day, to be treated as one of the most dangerous objects in private hands. Perhaps the Warrens were brilliant charlatans who built an empire on fabricated stories. Perhaps they were sincere researchers who genuinely believed in what they were doing. Or perhaps, just perhaps, there are things in this world that we cannot fully explain. Things that exist in the spaces between what we know and what we fear. And perhaps the most terrifying thing of all is not the doll itself. It's the fact that we'll never know for sure. Annabelle remains in her glass case. Waiting. Watching with those black button eyes. And the question he posed more than 50 years ago remains unanswered. What's really inside? And that's the story of Annabelle, America's most infamous doll. I want to know what you think. Do you believe the Warrens' version? Do you think it was a deliberate fraud? Or is there a psychological explanation that clears everything up? Let me know in the comments. I love reading your theories, and honestly, some of the best insights come from you. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider giving it a like. It greatly helps more people discover these fascinating cases. And if you want more in-depth investigations into unexplained phenomena, paranormal cases, and urban legends, subscribe and turn on notifications. I investigate each case with the same rigor, presenting all perspectives, leaving it up to you to decide what to believe. We'll soon have even more disturbing cases. Some with more evidence. Others with even less. But all equally fascinating. Until then, keep an open mind, but not so open that your brain falls out. See you in the next case.